Hi, everyone. Thank you for listening. As always, a reminder that this podcast does not constitute real estate advice, legal advice, broker advice, or advice of any other nature. This is an informative podcast. And if you need advice, please reach out to the correct professional who can help you. Thanks for listening.
Welcome to Launch Grow Harvest Podcast, Business Growth Coaching with Connie and Roland Kim.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another podcast episode of Launch Grow Harvest with Roland Kim and
Connie Boona.
Welcome, everyone. Today, we're going to talk to you about leverage in teams. And I'm going to throw it over to you in a second here, Connie. And you're a leader in so many ways. You got family, band, brokerage, and whoever thought you'd be a leader of a team doing well over 200 real estate transactions a year.
Exciting.
Bringing you back to the early years, how do you get started when you want to build a team?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting question, and it's also, I think, it's a path that has a variety of angles and strategies. You know, for myself personally, I always felt I always in my real estate trajectory considered myself a great team member. I remember my first year in real estate approaching my managing broker at the time and saying to him, like, do you know any realtors that are looking for team members? And, you know, that would have been in like 2009. Possibly wasn't a super common thing
back then.
And I had very little direction. And so that whole concept petered out. And I can remember early in our relationship, getting to know one another as new agents. You always had such a vision of what you wanted to build and what you wanted to create. And I can remember thinking, and I can actually remember very candidly talking to you about what you were trying to build and saying, you know, great, like I'm on board. I'm a great team member. And so I never saw myself as the person who would be leading that team. In my mind, I always just imagined I'm a good team player. And so I always saw myself in the team. And so I guess our evolution has been, if I think about mapping it, somewhat following the Millionaire Real Estate Agent's growth plan, starting off as a solo agent, then getting your first hire being an assistant, and then we partnered. Not part of the model. And and in that partnership, I think I really learned a lot from you on what it looked like to lead other people, and lead an admin and be clear. That was a really, really intimidating step for me. And I think that I'm not unlike many other realtors where I was still living in a mindset in those early years of, just making enough money monthly to keep myself going. And so I really didn't have a lot of future run. I didn't have much in the pipeline and in the savings pool to keep me going. And so the idea of committing to a salary of another human really, really scared me. And what I've learned in reflection is it was probably one of the most important turning points in my career. It was when I really shifted my focus around the fact that I was running a business as opposed to just being an independent entrepreneur out there just looking for the next deal. Mm-hmm. And that mindset shift really opened up a whole world of opportunity as it relates to a team.
Yeah, and I mean, I would go as far as to say our partnership as a team is a unique one, and it's not a recipe I would follow again, in the sense that it took such a long, natural process when neither of us had an intention of needing a team or leading a team or having folks, and it kind of we had two well-intentioned people helping each other out, and it kept migrating further and further into a relationship.
Yeah.
And the team, and essentially everything from a team aspect grew because we wanted to create a world big enough not to lose the people we liked.
Yeah.
So what we're going to lead into here in a minute is kind of a more typical process, the pros and cons and how to build a team. And I would say we lucked out that we met each other at the right time, and we were both inexperienced, naive, but hardworking and caring. And we went down the path at the same time, and we created an amazing partnership. I wouldn't say that's an easy one to replicate. Where since then, we've actively created teams in brokerage business and other business. So we've become more astute and more aware of how to create a team and what you're looking for, and the negatives and positives, and the traps not to fall into.
Yep.
So, where we came from wasn't at all planned out. I never actually thought I'd have a team. I just had a plan. And then you needed different pieces for that. So, if I was to bring it back to what are the benefits of a team, what do you think are the benefits? Why are people looking for teams, and why are people looking to create a team?
When I think about what I was looking for as a young realtor, I was looking for stability. I was looking for structure. I was looking for leads, truthfully, and just a way to survive, and thinking about it when you look at other people around you and they're succeeding at a high level, it's very it's enticing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was very naive in what I was looking for. And I think about, I reflect often on the evolution of our partnership. It's, so interesting to me. It was, your son, your eldest son is 9 years old today.
Yeah.
And I remember it was a trip that you took with a newborn baby and your wife to Australia. And I covered your business for you.
That's right.
And you were gone for a good long time. And that was really, that took our partnership to the next level, because I think it allowed us to, one of the hurdles with running a team is letting go of control.
Yes.
And so one of the things that taught us early in our process was trust, that we had to trust each other. You had to trust that I was going to, care and support your business. And I remember in reflection that we didn't really do a ton of
due diligence.
We didn't, you're a very organized person. So you had lots of notes and client files. That was back in the day when we had a client file for every client. So I can remember having a big stack of your client files and things that I was actively managing. And we each just had blind trust in one another. There was no part of me that accepted that opportunity, thinking about what it was going to give me.
Mm-hmm.
That wasn't my mindset when I was doing it. I thought, what a cool opportunity this is going to be, because I'm getting access to, transactions that I wouldn't otherwise see or be involved in. So I really thought about it from an experience perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I think just instinctually, I agreed to it because you had always been so generous and kind with me. And so it's just, I am the kind of person that, brings my neighbor a cake when they shovel my driveway. Like I just like reciprocating with kindness. It makes me feel good. And so that started our relationship, and it opened my eyes to what your business world looked like. And at that stage of your business, I think you had one admin, full-time or part-time, I can't recall. Might have been part-time.
Yeah, I don't remember.
But it was very interesting for me to see what it would be like, or what it could potentially be like, to have a support person to help with transaction management and database management and organizing events. I remember later that year you hosted an event at the Olympic Village.
Yeah, the community center.
At the community center, and I can remember saying to my wife and my mom, I really want to go to this event because I really want to build a relationship with this person. So I want you to meet Roland. And I'll never forget. It's so firmly implanted in my mind. And so, for me, again, the reason I thought about teams was because I hadn't yet developed that part of my mind where I could visualize where other opportunities were coming from and could come from. And so it just seemed like the most obvious path.
Okay. So I kind of want to clarify a few things here. One, as we're talking right now, it's radiating in my brain that really what we're talking about is almost a partnership at the same time that I've created a team.
Yes.
And I don't think that's natural or easily designable, right? Because it required us both coming in at equal level from different skill sets, different abilities, but there wasn't a natural leader. Like we led in different areas. And so it truly was a partnership, which I think is amazing. I'm so proud to be part of it, but I don't think it's the natural way that a team is formed. So I'd like to put us aside a little bit and for the conversation going forward, talk about teams in the sense of the classic way.
Yes.
And so talk a little bit about now with our experience of running the brokerage and, dozen plus years in the business, the truth is there's less, I haven't thought of it, but I'm going to say there's less than a dozen teams that I can think of that have been around that I'm aware of from the beginning of our career to now.
Mm-hmm.
And there's been a plethora of teams that have dissolved and many of them, they never worked.
Mm-hmm.
So I would ask you right now, if you were, looking to design a team, talk a little bit about how you do that.
Yes.
And the pros and cons of the team member wanting to join the team and the team leader.
Well, one of the things I think I would do differently. So just baseline assumptions of where we are before we're considering building a team. So I'm a solo agent right now with one admin.
Okay.
And I want to expand. I want to build a team. And the team structure is going to be very much a pyramid structure where I am leading the team. I'm the rainmaker, as they may call it. And so the first thing I would look for, the first thing I would do is identify who I need and why I need them.
Mm-hmm.
And so a common trajectory is, for a solo agent, I want to be focusing more on the listing business, let's say, and I want to bring on a team member to help support my buyer clients. And so I would be drawing out a business standard manual on Connie Boona's real estate business. And I would be identifying why working with me is unique and different. What are my systems? What are my strategies? What are my standards? By having that template in place, I can then think about when I'm interviewing for the opportunity to work with my team, I can identify the right personality type and potentially the right I don't know that necessarily the right sphere that the team member would have necessarily matters, but all of these things are criteria, but certainly to identify the right candidate that aligns with my goals, aligns with my values as a business owner, and someone that is coachable and someone that is, I would spend a lot of time talking to them about the structure and the dynamic. I think that a lot of people get into team dynamics and they actually don't want to be team members. They want to be partners.
Tell me more about that.
So they join a team, but they think, one of the questions that we have been asking prospective team members is, how would you feel if you serviced a client and you saw that 50% of the commissions was being given to the lead agent? How would that make you feel? Give me an honest answer. And, if the person's honest answer is, I would feel terrible, it would make me feel frustrated, I would feel resentful, that's not a fit. That's not a team fit. The right team member says and feels, and instinctively it's their response. There's no judgment here. It's not a value judgment. It's about alignment and it's about the right fit. The right team member says, I would feel amazing because it would be 50% of something I never would have had if I didn't know you. And that's the kind of person I would be looking for. And I would be looking for a person that sees the bigger picture of opportunities. I would be looking for somebody with an abundance mindset, not somebody that is, resentful or begrudges a commission split that must come back to the team leader, they're bearing all the costs to run the team, to run the business, to run the admin. And so there's a cost to run that business. And I think that that's also something that I would make sure was really clearly documented in the standards. I like transparency. As a business person, I think there is power in being honest with prospective team members and staff about your overhead, about what it costs to run your business, because it can be confusing when people just look at gross earnings without taking into consideration what it costs to run a high-level team.
Yeah. And later in this podcast, we're going to talk a little bit about leverage. And I would say that team member that, kind of failed out of the interview, so to speak, that you just talked about, where they felt cheated or they felt resentful of only having 50% of the commission, they're not looking for a team. They're looking for leverage. So they're looking for help. And so the cool part is there's opportunity and there's availability for both.
Yeah.
Just thinking about all the teams and team conversations we've been part of, where people in the industry that see what we have and feel that we can give them some insight or sit down with us and they're talking about prospective teams or what their plans are.
Yes.
And now that I'm sitting here talking with you, I just had a little bit of a reflection, and it's interesting that every team move comes out of fear, right? So that the team leader is willing to consider taking on more team members because they have too many things going on and they're probably dropping the ball somewhere. So they're fearing that they're not doing the best job that they can. And many of the new agents naturally are afraid, rightly so, of getting success, of getting business in the pipeline and getting business done. And so they're coming from fear of like, oh my gosh, what if I don't do a transaction? I should join a team.
Yes.
And so the problem is, it's funny. It's almost like, if you brought it back to a dating life, and if you were, if there's only one other person that you semi were attracted to and you're stuck on an island, well, you likely will connect because you're the only two people on the island, right? And even though in real life you were only slightly compatible, right?
Yes.
And so the team situation is interesting in that sense, because I think most of the failure comes from people doing a huge move, which is essentially starting a new relationship. It's like, other than my wife and my kids, you're the most powerful relationship in my life. And, before that ends, I'm going to leave real estate. So it's going to be the second most powerful relationship in my life. I wouldn't go casually into that.
Yes.
And I know not all of them are as intertwined and as strong as ours, but I think a lot of new agents naturally feel that a lead agent has a plethora of business that they somehow are not achieving and not closing. It's almost like, a fruit tree, and they're not plucking all the fruit off it, and it's just shriveling and going bad. And a team leader thinks, oh, there's, a new agent naturally will just appreciate all my insights and that will be value enough. And so just jump on board and do my random tasks, and I'll give you some guidance, and that's a win-win.
Yes.
And, most of the time those relationships don't make 6 months because no one's happy.
And I think one of the things that popped up for me as you're describing this is, if you're considering taking on a team member, are you considering all of the ways in which you are going to hold yourself and them accountable, including, for example, if part of that commitment is offering them regular coaching and regular check-ins, like that is something that needs to be accounted for. It needs to be scheduled and it needs to be organized. Are you ready to take that on? Is that part of your value proposition? Otherwise, are you just looking for a licensed assistant? So different, right?
And it's interesting because that's probably the saddest part when you see it happening, where you see two people fall apart or a team fall apart that could have worked. And I think the team leader didn't ask themselves, am I a good leader? What are my natural strengths and where am I, naturally weak at? And then focusing on solving that, because I think a lot of failure comes from, failing to plan, so to speak, and setting the time aside to make sure that, you're checking in and like we call it the 30, 60, 90. There's before we sign on the dotted line that we're getting into relationship with another team member, we've clearly outlined that at the end of 30 days, this is, what it needs to look like. We need to be doing this for you. You need to be doing this for us. Here are the results that we need to be seeing.
Yes.
And are we both in agreement that if this isn't, at least an 8, 9 out of 10, we've got issues. Like we're probably not the right combination. And so it's interesting. I think teams are incredible where there's so much opportunity, but it's almost like people are rushing into it and then just assume it's going to work out.
Yes. Well, it speaks for me to the standards,
Okay.
right? It speaks to taking the time to, and frankly, don't reinvent the wheel. Okay.
Mhm.
There are great templates for team building and for, team standards that you can use as a template and then customize for your own business. But thinking about, engaging in that new relationship, bringing a new individual into your world, they're an extension of you and a representation of your business. What are you committed to doing to ensure that they are successfully onboarded and successfully coached to a place that they are reflecting your standards to the highest level? If you don't have standards, it's really, really hard for them to understand what the expectations are.
Mhm.
If you're a suit and tie business owner, and there are lots of realtors that's their persona,
Mhm.
and you have a team member that's Lululemons, that might be incongruent with the image you are trying to portray.
Mhm.
And so really like being transparent and direct about those standards, and then building out a roadmap on metrics and whether or not, and clearly coaching to the standard. By 30 days, here's what I expect that you are capable of doing. By 60 days, you're capable of doing these extra tasks. And by 90 days, you're running at full steam. And real transparency that if you're not at 90 days meeting expectations, then we already have an agreement in place that we're not in alignment.
Mhm.
So that conversation doesn't feel like a bomb. It doesn't feel like the rug got pulled out from underneath me breakup conversation. It's like, you know what, Mary, like we gave it a good try, and I really appreciate it. And then you don't sabotage a relationship. Sometimes it's a matter of time. I know when I think about the growth of our team, some team members, super experienced realtors, I never would have thought would be even interested in having conversations with us on the team level. And they're just, it's a time and a place. We just got to a place in their career and ours where that overlap was like a perfect fit.
Mhm.
And now we have a dynamic where we can offer them a lot of value. And it's different for each team member. It's not a one size fit all.
Yeah, no, and one of the things you mentioned there that really resonates with me is again, it comes to fear. Like a lot of people are looking at the other person to solve something for them without having poured into that person's cup.
Yes.
So sometimes, if I was being stereotypical, the new agent is afraid of not having business, so they're just looking for someone to give them leads, and the team leader is it wants some extra help. But the conversation they haven't had is, what happens when everything goes well 5 months down the road? Does that team member actually truly want to see their name on a bus, on a bus bench, on a billboard, and that's their passion, and which is amazing, but likely that's not the recipe for a great team relationship.
Yeah.
And the team leader, like we've seen before, is, do they have the bankroll for 6 months because it's not going to turn over in 30 days where that, the team member is going to pay for themselves or the admin. And so we have seen, the potential of good partnerships, but again, the lack of planning, the lack of clarity. And again, it comes down to things being written down, because you can even talk about it, but people hear things differently. And so the documented agreement is so integral to make sure that, you're both seeing the same thing and talking about the same thing.
That's a really, really good point. So
Okay.
let's spend some time to talk about, like the skeletal structure of a good team agreement. What does that look like? What do you cover?
So first and foremost, I think you need to identify what are the tasks of each person.
Mhm.
What's the team going to provide? And that is, our team, we're so heavy and powerful on the support that we provide our team members. We have amazing client events, marketing systems, technology, and a back end that is second to none. And so we love getting business with team members that have a solid team, and they just don't want to run their own admin. They don't want to run their own database and do their own mailings and everything. And they just love doing real estate. And so for a fair fee, we're able to do all that for them with our existing system. And they become far more streamlined and they are rejuvenated. They get time back. And so really our team value is we make you better. We get more out of your existing database and we show you how you can improve your business. I'd say, 20 to 50% a year.
So clearly on the team agreement, we're clearly identifying the value
Everything.
proposition.
Yeah,
Here are
everything
all
we're
the
gonna
things you have access to. Here's what the support system looks like. Here are the accountability targets. Here's what and would you say it's important on that team agreement for the team leader to set targets for the team member? Is that a component of it?
Yeah, I mean the 30, 60, 90 that we offer is not so much targets where you're going to have to hit this number of transactions. It's more you're going to have done all these things to understand how we operate.
Yes.
And you're going to kind of really understand what's available. And so and equally for other teams, perhaps, and classically maybe more so, teams were viewed as a lead source.
Yes.
Right? And so perhaps a more traditional team agreement would say that the team leader is going to provide a certain amount of leads to the team member, and the team member in exchange is going to do a certain amount of lead gen to
Yes.
cultivate those leads. That's not us.
Yeah.
But regardless,
But that could be a model. That could definitely be a
that is
model.
probably the most popular model. I
Yeah.
think we're more unique. It just needs to be documented.
Yes.
Right? Because often if that is documented, I think it avoids low-level relationships from establishing, because they're like, you know what? I don't want to sit on the phones for 6 hours a day. Because the truth is, if you were willing to do that and you've been a realtor for like a year, why aren't you doing it already? Right?
Yeah.
Like that habit would probably help you be a great sole agent.
Well, I would suggest that potentially the team member sees the lead agent as having access to. I know one of the things that new agents can struggle with is who the heck do I call? And so there is, I think, a value proposition to be said for the structure that a team leader might give. So if lead generation is a component of that team agreement, perhaps the team leader is providing the team agent with a source for the phone call, a list, a directory of some sort, and some scripts and a reason to make the phone call. That's another huge value proposition of a team, right? It's the leverage piece around what you can have conversations about. That's something that for me, when I think about the value we offer to a team member, it's like, we're selling 2 or 3 properties a week. That's a very exciting story to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's always something to talk about in terms of our team's actual transactional business that help a team agent with those conversations. What about expenses? Is that something that's outlined on a team agreement?
Yeah, definitely. I think we certainly make our team members aware of what our budget looks like. And so where the money is going that they're paying back into the team.
And what the team member is responsible for paying for themselves?
Definitely. Our goal now, I think we've done a pretty good job on our team agreement that you couldn't come up with a question that we haven't addressed or haven't discussed. And if there is, then we put it in the team agreement.
Yeah.
We go so far as to build in an exit strategy on our team agreement. So what it looks like at any time, if you decide that you want to go and be it 6 months, 6 years, hopefully not 6 months, that somehow would be a failure all around. But what that looks like, and so again, we come, and everyone's different, but we come from a giving win-win relationship. So our exit strategy is built around not fighting over the clients, but making sure that if a client goes in a different direction than we feel that they should, that the client gets the service from that person, and there's a continuity of service. So it's really focused on a win-win. I want to bring it back a little bit to how do you go about vetting a potential team member? Like,
Yeah.
what's your interview process, and how, what do you think is best practice?
Yeah, awesome question. So, I have taken a course offered by Keller Williams called Career Visioning. I've done it probably 3 times.
Mhm.
I could do it 10 more. It's so, so, so powerful. And the course really centers around hiring and how to find the right fit and how to follow a system and a roadmap to make sure that you're asking the right questions. And like anything, building your bench, as they'll say, is a skill.
Mhm.
And it's something that needs to be worked on and practiced. And so thinking about, when you have a successful interview with somebody, one of the primary things that you need to be aware of is, are you giving everybody an equal playing field? So are you going into the interview with no questions prepared, just rando, so that you can just wing it and go based on gut instinct? Experience tells me that that's probably the worst thing you can do. That's my natural default tendency. And I've proven to myself time and time and time again that that's not the best way to hire.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things I've identified as my blind spot when it comes to hiring is I have a soft spot for people. I like people and I want to like people. That default to truth, personality behavior, like it's real. And so as a result, I feel sometimes if I have great rapport with somebody at the onset, that can really cloud my judgment. And so what career visioning has taught me is to follow a very standard set of and a standard path of questions, so that when we're evaluating candidates, it's apples to apples. We've asked these candidates the same questions.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yes, of course, in it's very natural to when you're hearing the response for you to have a reaction, and
Mm-hmm.
potentially you're taking notes for yourself. But I'm working on maintaining neutrality through that process and doing it more frequently. And I think that for me is one of the more important evolutions
Mm-hmm.
of my in my life as a team leader is moving away from just using gut instincts and not having a real standard or system around the interview process to really diving in and following. Like every single time we've made an amazing hire, when we reflect, we're like, oh, actually, like we followed the model really,
Mm-hmm.
really well with that.
Yeah. And so, I'm going to give you a shout out where even as little as 3 years ago, if you were interviewing someone and someone said, yeah, I'm a band member, you would have gone off cue and would have been like, amazing, I'm a band, love band, love music. And so
high eye here on the disc.
Squirrel. And now I would say sometimes, we finish an interview and afterwards I'm like, I can't read you. You were polite, but like, are you excited? Did you like them? And you're like, yeah, I love them. But like I couldn't tell because you went through the whole process.
Yes.
So I'm going to correct you on one thing where you said every single one of our hires were based this way. I'm going to disagree with that.
That's
I'm going to say that this is the best way of getting the best use of your time and replicating. Think of it like a recipe. If you follow all these questions, if you give everyone the same opportunity and you're building out a bench in a way that you followed the same steps, you're pretty sure to get the same end product. Once in a while, you luck out. Like we found an amazing business manager, Tamara. I think we found her by someone.
My father-in-law played high school football with her uncle.
And she needed some work.
And she needed work. It was so random.
And, even early on in that relationship, when we had her in the wrong role,
Yep.
I didn't think anything amazing.
Yep.
And now I would say, it's one of the most integral people in our business.
Yes.
And so it does happen, but that isn't replicatable. That isn't sustainable. And it's not a good investment of your time.
Mm-hmm.
So following the process you just described is a really great way of screening people and making sure you're getting the right person for the role.
Totally. Yes.
And then I would also, you got to be honest with yourself on how your team operates. So if you're a really, interpersonal team where you're going on retreats together and like you want to meet the other people's partners, you may want to figure out is that the right, like more about them and really their track record of success is an area where I think a lot of people are failing, not looking into it. If you're looking to, get a financial controller, someone that offers stability into your business and you really look at their track record of success and they've been switching a job every year and a half, even if they give you the best interview, you really got to dig into the history. Like the history doesn't represent what they're saying and where they're looking to go.
Yes.
So we've talked about partnership. We've talked about teams. I want to bring it back a little bit and talk about leverage, where you were talking about that person, that theoretical person who, you're sitting down to see if they're a fit for your team. But when you ask them, how would you feel if, you did a job and you only got half the commission and they felt cheated and they felt it wasn't the right fit, they're looking for leverage.
Yes.
And so if you're someone that needs more hands, more help, what's your advice? How would you look at yourself now if you wanted to stay as a sole realtor, but you're overwhelmed and you need help? What are the options available?
One thing I would think about is just having key partners, like,
Okay.
so not a formal business partnership, but just a key partnership to say, and, people need to get paid fairly. So, might look like giving the lion's share of the commission to the primary person that's going to be actually taking the transaction from A to Z. But otherwise you never would have serviced that transaction.
Mm-hmm.
You never would have been able to service that client. So taking a real look at what it is in your business that you need, and thinking about it from that perspective. Another thing that I think lots of realtors are looking for is coverage.
Mm-hmm.
And my best advice is, pay people for their time. If you have another professional and you're asking them, for example, to cover you while you're on a vacation in Hawaii for 2 weeks, pay them.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to do that work for free. It's unreasonable to expect that you can totally disconnect and not compensate somebody for that work. I hear lots of people talk about, oh, we'll just, I'll do it for you and you'll do it for me. I just don't think it works. I think that creates a situation of resentment. And I think the best case scenario is, you want to cover my business for 2 weeks. I'm going to give you X number of dollars to do that work, whether we transact or not. And if we transact, I'm also going to give you a percentage of the transaction. And I think it creates a win-win scenario. And I think that could be an amazing opportunity of leverage so that you can have a balance. You can take the holiday that you want.
What are some of the failures with leverage that people are falling down on?
I think not having open and direct conversation, like not really going into the details.
Yeah.
What about you?
Yeah, I think you brought up a really good point, which isn't, I would say, automatically the average in the industry where someone covers you and they're compensated. I think most people are still of the mindset where I'll do it for you, you do it for me. But we've seen that rarely works with the long-term view. Another failure, I think, is not having the right resources, wanting it too early. So an agent that goes from no productivity to 12 deals a year in, let's say the first 10 months, they're running off their feet,
Yes.
right? But I would say that they have to build far more muscles themselves and work on themselves versus looking for someone to solve their time problem.
Okay.
And so independent realtor, unless you're doing, 30 transactions with a goal of growing, or 20 to 30 transactions and you want to get time back, you don't need support. You need time management. You need to, take care of yourself and figure out how to produce at a higher level. Because the problem is, it's not like hiring an admin is automatically going to work right out of the gate. Like there's a lot of training involved. There's a lot of, give and take. There's resources involved in order for fair compensation. And then there's just weird life that happens. You might have an amazing partner or like an admin team, an employee, and they decide to move to Yellowknife, right? And you already started visualizing what your life was going to look like 2-3 years down the road with them. And so life does happen, and you need to make sure that you've got the finances for it and understand that it can change. And then the final mistake, or the opportunity for improvement that I see with a lot of team leaders or independent realtors that hire a great assistant, is they don't reapply that time that they save into growing their business. So I've seen, a realtor that does 30 transactions, 30, 40 transactions a year, felt like they were run off their feet. They were unhappy. And then they get a great admin that's supporting them, that's earning, in my opinion, the money they're paying. And a year down the road, like, that realtor fires them because they feel they're losing money, because they didn't take that time that was given back to them and reapply it on their top 20%. They didn't do more lead gen. They didn't do more, apply themselves on relationship building. And they also didn't actively take time off to get rejuvenated. They kind of just watched more Netflix and spent more time wasting time.
Yes. Powerful.
Yeah.
So in summary, what's one book or one podcast or one, other than our podcast, obviously, that you might recommend to somebody if they really want to take this exploration of building teams to the next level?
The one thing podcast I really like that, again, brings it down to, what's one thing that's, if you fixed in your business, if you worked on, would make a huge impact.
Yeah.
What about you?
I think really, the Millionaire Real Estate Agent, following that model and reviewing that model, it's like as much as we've tried to rail against it, every single time we actually go back and reference, we're like, oh, right.
It's been done before properly.
Makes sense. So really I think those two nuggets are invaluable.
Yeah, my last one I'm going to throw in there, I'm listening more and more to John Maxwell, and I would say everything with him comes down to being a better leader.
Yeah.
Right? Like, he's written 100 books, but it really comes down to what can you do to better yourself, and as a result, that has an impact.
And one book that I've read recently, and it's on my list to read again this year, is a book called Multipliers, which is also a book about leadership and about getting the best out of the people around you. There you go. Hope you enjoyed.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.